Hello and welcome to Acupuncture Professional. It's Kath Berry here and my very special guest, Mary Elizabeth Wakefield. I've decided I can't actually introduce because her biography, as I sent to you in the link via the email about today, is so long that we'd spend half the webinar just talking about her accolades. But the most notable is, and it's probably the most impressive that we've come across because it summarises everything, is that in 2012, Mary Elizabeth won the Educator of the Year with the AAAOM, which is the USA Association of Acupuncture. So what that says to us is that she's world class and to date has trained over 5,000 practitioners from around the world in her specialty area, which is constitutional facial acupuncture. So it's with great pleasure, Mary Elizabeth, perhaps you could do a much better introduction of yourself and your journey into Chinese
Okay.
medicine as we wait for those questions to come on in.
Yes, thank you, Kath, and thank you very much for sponsoring this. And I just wanted to say hello to everyone down under there. I hear there's some Australians there. The Americans are all in their clinics working right now. We sent emails around, and they will get on the webinar later after we've had the live webinar. I I have, as I was telling Kat earlier, I'm kind of young and hyperactive, and so I've done a lot of things very quickly and through my life. Um, I am an opera singer and a musician as well as a flautist, and my original career was singing and performing. And I am also a craniosacral therapist, a massage therapist, a polarity therapist, shiatsu therapist. I lived in Japan. We just got back from Japan and have created about 20 plus different protocols for constitutional facial acupuncture. And as I said, I've written a book, Constitutional Facial Acupuncture, Elsevier, UK, 2014, and my partner and I, Michelangelo, are working on a book together called Vibrational Acupuncture, Integrating Tuning Forks with Needles, and that's Singing Dragon Elsevier, UK, 2018. And we will, for the Australians, be down under in August teaching in 4 cities, Sydney being one, Melbourne, Brisbane, and what's the other one? Perth. So we'll be there. We love going to Australia. There are many other things I could say. I've taught in symposiums all over the world. I teach a 2-year gold standard facial acupuncture course, and the third one's coming up in 2018. And we work with body, mind, spirit. So we don't really only address. I don't even call it cosmetic. And that's today what we're going to look at: the fact of the idea of transformation and transformational tales or stories, that true stories that I have experienced and had the blessing and the gift to experience in my practice. And you may have a few questions about
And
those.
well, that's
So,
my first question would be just what does transformation actually mean? Like, what's your definition of transformation? What does it mean to
well,
you?
if you look at the dictionary, transformare means to change form. And trans means to go beyond. So it's a Latin word, to change form. So the whole idea is that transformation of our thoughts, our body, our feelings, our emotions are all possible uh, to get in alignment with our cellular memory and who we really are, truly are. When you think of the Chinese, the whole idea of the Ming being your destiny, being living long enough to embrace your destiny or your gift you give to the world, that has to do with a transformation on our journey in life. Along the way, all the lessons that we learn, that we stuff under the belt, the daimai, that we learn, that we transform. There was a wonderful Zen, I don't remember what century, Zen Buddhist, and his name was Banki, of all things. And his question was this: what was my face before I was born? He was traveling all over the world looking for his original self, or who he truly was before he became all of those personalities. And I would just say that on our journey through life, that the idea of embracing who we really are and giving our gifts back, like I'm doing my best to do today. Um, and I enjoy doing that. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy mentoring. I enjoy working with patients. And I love talking to you, Kath, and all of you. So the idea of transformation is that people can go beyond themselves, can literally change their cellular memory on all levels and become who they really are.
Mm.
what your face was before you were born.
And I like
So
see.
that's just,
And
yeah,
you at the beginning in your introduction were very clear. This is not cosmetic acupuncture. That this
exactly.
is beyond that. So then, what's your philosophy? Behind facial acupuncture.
Well, the reason for that is I work constitutionally, and I also encourage my colleagues and students to work with other syndromes like Bell's palsy. If you're working with the face and the body, you should know how to do other things, Bell's palsy, stroke. I have a wonderful story about a post-operative neuropathy that I worked with. Um, we're talking about um, we're talking about trigeminal neuralgia. Uh, I work with people who've been in accidents, and one young man who smashed his face because of a motorcycle accident. And so it goes on. So really, the face being the most emotive part of the body means that it has an intelligence, and it telegraphs to the world how we feel, think, and how we live our lives. Everything is seen in the face. And so I get a little upset when people call it cosmetic or label it as superficial. It is not, because we're working at a very deep root level, working with the entire body at 3 levels, and then we're working with the face as the extension of that. So if you're thinking of, let's say, working with the face, think of the Tang Dynasty. The Tang Dynasty, the 7th to the 10th centuries, was called the Chinese Renaissance. And Sun Tzu Mao lived in that time. And his book, Thousand Ducat Formulas, and the supplement to Thousand Ducat Formulas, he spoke about working with herbs, right? Diet, healthy ways of living. But he also spoke about longevity, and he gave you a lot of information around beauty, a lot of information about how to look and feel good. And today, because of the whole Botox industry, because we did that depression suppression with you, the whole idea of working organically with constitutional facial acupuncture is very powerful. But everybody seems to want a quick fix. So in using the word cosmetic, we're also saying, gee whiz, we're working like the plastic surgeons or the Botox people. It is not. It's an organic, natural process that works with the entire constitution and brings online health and well-being, as well as that shen that shines forth from the eyes. So it is profound, because all the facial muscles have emotions, and we express the emotions through our face.
And,
That's
and
profound.
and can you give us
Look, we're
an?
looking at each other.
I was just
Yeah,
thinking that. And can
go
you give
ahead.
us an example? You mentioned earlier the Bell's palsy, trigeminal neuralgia, and the motorcycle accident. What's been the most striking case for you where you've just gone,
Oh God.
"This is my
Ugh.
purpose"? Is there an
I've
example?
had, let me just give you an idea of what we're talking about. I have the healthy vanity transformation. I have the post-operative neuropathy. I have the temporary blind one. Somebody went blind in a class that I was working with, and of course, all the names and where this happened will remain
Of course, yeah.
personal. And yes, I have people with suspended swords. I have, let me see what I have here. I wrote down, because there are quite a few things. I have somebody who in a class went into a past life regression and died. Remember dying. And these people were very substantial, grounded people. So I have a lot of stories that are transformational. One I could start with is the healthy vanity story. And this is not as dramatic as the temporarily blind. But this woman came to me years ago, and she was a smoker, and she had lines above her upper lip. And so she said, I want to get rid of these lines. And of course, I told her, look, we can help you stop smoking. She said, no, I'm not stopping smoking. I'm not stopping smoking. So I made her aware that we wouldn't have as dramatic results if she continued that way. So I would work on the lines and other things in her face and her body to try to support her. And every time she came back, she would say, these lines are here. It isn't working. And I said, you're still smoking. But finally, the third time she came back, and she was a very strong New York executive, female executive. And she looked at me and she said, you're not doing your job. And I said, excuse me? The lines are gone when I leave, and they come back when I, during the week. And I said, and this is very New York. I had to speak where she lived. I said, "You're not doing your job." I said, you're still smoking. Show me what you do when you stand in the mirror and look and pull out a cigarette and do not light it. So she did, and she pulled her cigarette out and she went, ooh, ooh, ooh. While she was oohing, I told her, "You're drying your lung up. Your health is being compromised, et cetera, et cetera." So I worked on her this last time, and I said, "You make your own decision. And if you want help, stop smoking." "No, I don't want to stop smoking." But at the end of this constant litany, she came back the next week. There were no lines. I didn't say anything. All I said is, "Do you want a little bit of help with regular therapy?" And she said, "Yes, I stopped smoking because I wanted to." And I said, "Do you want help?" She said, "No, I'm strong-willed. I did it cold turkey. I can do it. I know myself." I helped her anyway, but really the important thing about this story is that she then began to realize what acupuncture can do. The entire body, her health changed, her outlook on life changed. She began to understand that this is a powerful process, a transformative process, and she never did smoke again. And her health, she was starting to get emphysema that young. Not only did her health change, she opened up to other worlds. She opened up to creative ventures. She wasn't as hard or tough. So what I was saying is that this is a healthy vanity story, but it brings people in to the practice, and then they begin to learn how profound. So I think that's transformational. It's not quite as transformational as it is transformational, but not quite as transformational as the temporary blind story.
Sure, we'd love
Do
to.
people want to hear
We'd
that?
love to. And just while you're telling that story, I just want to remind
Yes.
anybody that's just joined us, if you could please turn on your video and audio, because we'd actually love to hear. In a moment, we're going to hand questions over to you. We'd love to bring you in live, or if for some reason you can't do the live, you could just chat the question to me in the chat pad. But the value of having Mary Elizabeth live at her mid-afternoon in New York is being able to ask these questions and obviously learn from her directly. So we'd love to sort of hear about that situation you're in, Mary Elizabeth, while our audience is gathering their questions to ask you.
Okay, good. I changed my mind. I think I'll go into more technical one, the post-operative neuropathy.
Sure.
I had a patient years ago, and he had a surgery on a benign brain tumor at the base of his brain. It was pressing on his trigeminal nerve, and the right side of his face, all the nerves were severed. So he had tingly, numbness, pain, burning, motor damage, flaccid muscles, spasms, loss of balance, etc. And when they did give him surgery, they cut all of those nerves and muscles. And what happened is he was also then blind and deaf in his right ear, which he had never had before. So he came to me basically with one of the symptoms was terrible red and painful right eye, and that was the side that they did the surgery. And so I worked with his constitution, and I worked for about, I would say, 4 weeks with the neuropathy, but I also worked with his eye in a very big way and got rid of the redness basically, and that he was having less pain. So when he went back to his medical doctor, the doctor who had him on Lyrica, which blocks pain, said, "What are you doing?" He said, "You don't seem to need as much pain medication." So he brought down his medication, and he said to the doctor, "Look, I'm having facial acupuncture, constitutional facial acupuncture." And the doctor said to him, "Oh, no, that couldn't be it. What else are you doing?"
And so what
He said,
points
"No,
were you
really,
using?
I'm having..."
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm curious. To know,
I said,
I'm
"Really?"
curious to know what sort of points are you using. When you talk
Oh,
about
God.
constitutional acupuncture too, you're talking
I
about
was,
needling
I
in the
was,
face as well as, do you do distal points when you talk
yes,
about treating his eyes? Would you do liver
sure.
points, or how? If you
With
take
it,
us through clinically what you were doing with him.
well, for the eye, around the eye, I would needle gallbladder 1 and also a choho, the extra point within the orbit of the eye, especially for the redness and the pain. The gallbladder 1 works with the intrinsic muscle of the eye, so it's like doing laser without doing laser. We're really working with the inner eye. I also worked with What else did I do there? I also worked with the his eyebrow was drooping slightly because of the problem, and so I worked with a extra point called Upper Shangming, which is right the foramen under Yu Yao, the eyebrow, and it's on the orbital ridge of the eye. And that seemed to help him. As far as the other points, I worked with motor points in particular because we're working with motor nerve damage. So I used the neuromuscular junction, and the specific needling that I do, I work with that all the time. So I worked with his droopy mouth here. So the motor point is not just stomach 4, it's a specific needling and a deeper needling to get the neuromuscular junction. They can call that muscle online. Either flaccid muscles will come online or tight muscles will relax. And then I also worked here because along B-tongue in the nose, there's a specific point where you can get 2 motor points with 1 needle. I'd have to show people. Constitutionally with kidney yang deficiency, so I worked with the body as well, and I don't even remember those points now, but I have an article I've written about this postoperative neuropathy. You could also find it on my website, but if anybody's interested, they could email me, and I would email them this article.
If you email it to me, I'll
Yeah,
share it with
do.
the group, because that would be fabulous. And one of the things I'm also, I'm conscious of that in my acupuncture practice. I saw a patient today, and I'm so nervous about needling on the face, just because I think there's also something that I feel that it's such an invasive thing to do that I'm very, very cautious. And what's your thoughts about needle depth and about you're just talking about needle?
Can I just finish the story?
Yeah,
It's not done yet.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Of course.
What
Yeah.
happened is after 6 months, we did maintenance and his face did the right side of the face started to lift and tone, and he began to feel the needles, which was fantastic because he had a real problem. He had he wasn't able to feel the needles at a certain point, and so after 6 months, he looked at me during the maintenance, watching him, taking care of him. He said, "Look at my face." He said, "My right side of my face where I had the surgery looks really good." He said, "But my left side is drooping. Could you give me a facial acupuncture, please?" So I started to work on him that way, and I said, "You know what?" After a couple of weeks of working with him, I said, "You know what? You're not just a pretty face." And he said to me, "Are you kidding me? I'm a walking miracle." Because after that, within the 6 months, he started not wearing his hearing aid. Remember, they cut all the nerves and the muscles. And this motor point treatment literally regenerates the nerves. And he stopped wearing his hearing aid, and after, I didn't say anything to him, but I started speaking to him on his deaf side, which happened with the surgery. And he heard me. And I said, "I don't want to really get you too excited, but guess what? Your hearing is coming back." So it was a miracle. And yes, I'll get back to the point. So he was a walking miracle. You wanted to know what points?
Oh no, it was more just how anyone listening today on this call can hearing what you're saying start to incorporate some of these this whole philosophy into their practice. And in fact, now's a really good time too. But I'd like to hand it over to the audience. Chris, that I know that you're sitting there. Have you got any questions for Mary Elizabeth?
Not just now. Only that I've done some facial acupuncture for trigeminal neuralgia and some other face drooping. And the trigeminal neuralgia I got managed okay, but I had some that actually had nerve destruction, I suspect, and I actually couldn't get much more than about 50%. So it was quite difficult and she still has a droop, just a minor one. So I'm just wondering whether if we have got an opportunity to go back and have a look, that this motor point therapy might make a difference as well.
I'm thinking it would, because it has to do with the nerves and the muscles. And you can't needle too deeply in certain parts of the face, but you do needle slightly deeper where you can. And there's a specific area where you can access the motor point, the neuromuscular junction. And that really, really helps. I've had huge success with Bell's palsy, with motor points, and also with trigeminal neuralgia. Remember, he had that also. So I would say that might be a good thing to explore. and I'm very happy to. I'll be in Oz in August. Oh, what's this? You hear something?
Yeah, we've got someone coming in on the phone. That's that's all right.
Oh, there,
So
it's gone
back to
now.
Chris.
It's
Yeah.
gone now. So Chris, yeah, I think you did a wonderful job. 50% is excellent. And I don't know what kind of kneeling you did, but if you use the motor points and use muscle structure, it probably might be more effective. I think it would be. And if you want to email me once again and give me more details, I could probably give you more information. The motor point needling is just slightly a half soon deeper, and there's a specific way of doing it. I studied where the area of the motor points are, where the nerves and the muscle meet, and I was able to create an acupuncture point that was near that area. And so I would needle it perpendicularly to the depth, usually about a half soon, depending upon where you are in the body, in the face. And then I would angle it to that area where the neuromuscular junction is, because you have to traverse that area. So perpendicular, get the depth, then horizontally angle it. I don't go any deeper once I've gone through the skin, which I've got when I've gotten my depth. Then I fish around. I don't twist, because you'll twist it in the muscle. I fish around and I find that motor point, and usually it will be a grab, Chris, or it feels like the chi, but it's really motor point. It's a similar sort of thing. There could be a kind of a warmth or a tingly feeling, or a feeling of the needle around the needle tightening if it's really tight, or relaxing. So all we need to do is needle the right area, and the body is very intelligent, will do what it needs to do. So that's kind of a crash sort of course, but
you're saying, so
yeah.
again, it's fairly basic to use hand signals, but you're saying you actually go down into the point, and then you turn. So sort of down and then turn as
you get your depth. You have to get your proper depth,
yeah.
And then you angle it horizontally toward the area of the motor point, and then you fish and you find it. It will grab, and they'll feel it. In fact, even days later, they'll feel it working. So it's a powerful needling. It's one of the many needling protocols I do. I work with origin insertion. I work with protagonist and antagonist. I work with muscle structure, trigger and motor points in the face and body. I also do TCM and Japanese and Vietnamese acupuncture, but this works the best with that kind of thing, and it works very fast. I've had people with Bell's palsy who've had Bell's palsy for a very long time, but they weren't using motor points, and we will be doing that in New Zealand in August, or we'll be in Perth. And what happened is it cut the time down with the Bell's palsy in half. It really moves quickly. Of course, you have to work with the body and the person's pattern and what's going on and the stress. Chris, do you have any other questions, or?
Just at the moment, thank you.
Okay, great. I hope I helped you.
Yeah, and I have a question for Chris, only that I'm hoping that Chris is probably similar. That Chris, you do general acupuncture, and that this patient had come in with trigeminal neuralgia, and so what did you do in terms of going through the process to look up what was appropriate to treat? How did you approach that case when you were seeing a facial concern or a facial patient?
I think I've been flying. I've been 16 years in practice, and I've and a solo practitioner, and I have a mentor not too far away in the first couple of years, and I asked lots of questions of him, but pretty much I feel my way through it, and I have quite a reasonable library, and just spend a bit of time reading and finding out as much as I can about them, and just needling, knowing my depths and where I can go, and not being fearful, like you were saying, that as long as you're aware of what's underneath, you can be quite like even stomach too. You can needle quite deeply into there without causing too much damage. And I mean, I'm talking half sun, 3/4 sun, but you can get some quite substantial results by doing some of that needling and also superficial stuff. So it's just fly by my pants sometimes, I think. So, like most people, you get fearful at the start when you start, and then you after 16 years, you sort of go, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I know this works and I know this works, and that's why we sit here and ask questions as to actually where do we go from there.
This is it. Well, I have to confess, I'm actually quite fearful. Not at the not at the start of my practice, but certainly the start of working on the face a lot more. It's always an area that I've avoided because of just this nervousness.
I'd be very happy to come to Ibiza and help you.
This is right. This is right. Which is why.
Sorry,
no, Meredith, but this is why it's sort of hearing from you and just your description of the way you're doing it and thinking, gosh, I spent some time in China where they do very aggressive needling into the face and just having to reconcile.
It actually is not aggressive. It is not painful at all. It's how you do it. It is none of the needling on the face I do is painful. It's powerful.
Tell me more about your technique. Your technique to do, if you're going in that deep and threading, or what did you say? What was the word you used?
Well, the first thing, and I agree with Chris, is that after years of doing it, you're not fearful. I listen to my intuition, and I've learned to not needle something else if I feel I have a question about it. Should I put in that extra needle? And I'm not sure, I don't do it. But when I went to school, we were needling right in the first semester, ourselves and each other, and we learned trigger points as well as Kikomatsumoto Japanese and all the other styles and TCM. But I learned that I learned not to be afraid of it, and I was a needle phobic person when I went into acupuncture school many years ago because of all my allergy shots. So I decided to give myself a treat, and every week I was treated by the Dean of Studies. And I learned how wonderful acupuncture was. I learned not to be afraid. And there was some strong needling, but all I can say is that you breathe and you try it. We just had a mentorship in New York City doing some of these motor point techniques recently, and they were afraid. And I just had them do it, and I helped them, and I stood there. And then after doing it once, like needling within the eye, or there's this point on the neck that's an extra point for laryngitis. It's called Qiang Yin. And not many people know about it. It works with dystonia, it works with, let's say, tumors, thyroid tumors that are not, of course, cancerous. And it is just before stomach 9, before the SEM. It is in the stomach 9 area, and then you get that half as soon, and you angle it out toward the SCM. Now that's very frightening because the carotid artery is there. And people in school were taught, don't ever go near that, of course. And I just said, pull it out of the way, and if they have parchment skin, and the skin is very thin and has blue veins there, just don't needle that point. Often that is a sign of not only age, but also a person who has osteoarthritis, but the skin is too thin, right? But in this case, they did it, and once they did it, they were fine. It's just a matter of trying it. Grab a friend. Hopefully they'll still remain a friend. Grab a friend, grab a relative, and just try these points. And that's how I learned. And I agree, Chris, you just study and then you go.
Study and do. And I'd like to hand over to our audience. Who has some other questions for Mary Elizabeth Wakefield on this very illuminating topic of the constitutional facial acupuncture? That if you just type in.
I have some more stories to share, but
that would be wonderful.
Very happy.
I'd love to hear. Heather, you've got your audio on. Are you in a position to be able to ask any questions now? I'm going to start picking on people. Diane, or is it Barai? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Quiet, huh?
There we go. Yeah, it's always just what everyone has set time aside to come along and participate live, and so I would strongly encourage you to ask questions, and also I'd just love to hear from you. It's always really lovely hearing whether you are doing facial acupuncture routinely in your practice. If anyone's got any thoughts. Jane, I know this is your first live event with us. Jane Armand, have you got any questions of Mary Elizabeth Wakefield in New York? Or Justin's coming in from South Africa. So
oh, lovely.
Yeah,
lovely.
Justin, here he comes.
Welcome. Yeah.
I don't really have a specific question, to be honest. I do needle the face. I'm more of a general acupuncturist, but yeah, my needling background is quite deep, and I think by many standards, quite severe. I was taught by a classical Chinese doctor.
Oh,
So
yes.
sometimes the face is a bit rough for people. But I practiced on him things like bladder one and sort of things. So
That's good for you.
I'm
Yeah.
not anxious about it so much. But what you're describing, the motor point, that's fascinating for me. Of course, being in South Africa would be difficult to study with you. But I'm interested in that.
Bring
Don't
us to
really have.
South Africa. I'd love to travel.
That would be great if you would come. We are sort of on the perimeter here.
Where in South Africa are you? Cape Town
I'm
or?
in Cape Town, yeah, in Cape Town.
I hear very good things about Africa. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's a
So,
good place. It's just a little bit withdrawn from the rest of the world as far as acupuncture and Chinese medicine is concerned.
and so Justin, how do you attract your patients? If you say that you've got a fairly heavy-handed, I think, needle technique, do you have a issue in terms of your marketing your service or how acupuncture is perceived?
That's a tricky one. I think that my background is not TCM, put it that way. I guess I would call it classical Chinese medicine. My teacher came from a lineage that left China and went to Taiwan.
oh, yes, yes, yes.
So the emphasis is slightly different. But yeah, I would say that I apologize more for the sensation than patients require. It's in my nature, but most people say the same thing. I would say they say, I don't mind if it's uncomfortable as long as it works.
And what
That's
sort
about
of
the
things
most
are you
common.
seeing? What sort of things are you seeing that you're using facial acupuncture for?
I suppose the things that you've been describing, Bell's palsy, bit of trigeminal neuralgia. Recently, I had, what was it? Gosh, I'm going blank here. Well, around the ear, Meniere's syndrome.
Meniere's, yeah.
Yeah, that was quite interesting, and it responded nicely. Oh gosh, what's the other one? Shingles, actually. Shingles recently around the eye and onto the scalp.
Good,
That
good.
was frustrating. I mean, I got about 40 to 50% improvement. Actually, a bit more, but it's residual. It's not going completely. I feel like it's an area I would like to look into more. Just what you're describing, there's obviously a lot more to it. Because I come from a background mainly body needles. I mean, obviously face as well, but not specifically working with the face. People ask for aesthetic acupuncture, for example, but I don't have that background.
Well, any of the motor points, any of the muscle points, you can work with facial acupuncture, and then they also work with more serious issues as well. So what I wanted to say is that I'm very impressed that you're doing that kind of work, and that a lot of problems with shingles would be the immune system and the adrenals and emotions as well. All of these things hook into psycho-emotional issues, and spirit points in Chinese medicine are really important when in the scalp, and they've got these kidney spirit points on the chest, really help people get over maybe the shingles a bit faster as well. I always use those points because when you're working with the face and the body, emotions will arise. People have been stressed. Maybe they've lost their job, they've lost a partner, they've lost a child or their patient, or the baby's leaving the nest, now their baby's leaving the nest. It's very important. There was a study in the Tuina, an acupuncture magazine in China. It is in English, and I'm on the board. When I taught in Shanghai, they asked me to be on the board. And there's a wonderful article about Bell's palsy, and the first thing they did in the case study was to use spiritual points, spirit points on the scalp to calm the Shen. They were Du 24,
Okay.
right? Ben Shen, gallbladder 13
Yeah.
on either side of the head, and also the Shishinkong on top of the head. And they needled that first to help people with their trauma and their stress. And all of those people that had the psychospiritual needling, or the needling in the scalp, actually got better faster. No surprise. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense, not just for the shingles, but actually addressing many conditions where stress
Everything.
is at least a major trigger. see that a lot.
Yes. Yes, yes, I think you're doing great work, both of you, Chris, and also. The kidney spirit points, kidney 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, and 22. So 23 is on either side of CV17. Look those up, and they're part of the Chong mind, actually, if you're working with the 8 extraordinary meridians, which I always work with. I work with
Yeah,
the
that's fun.
extraordinaries. And you will find that that being able to not do all of these points, but to choose which points work, like kidney 24, which is under the third intercostal space, too soon on either side of the ren, on side of the sternum, has to called spirit burial grounds, and it has to do with loss. Somebody's just lost their husband, their wife, there's some sort of death or some sort of transformation happening. They've lost who they thought they really were. And there's a huge grieving going on. So um, I would highly recommend looking into those if people don't know about them. They're really amazing. You know, you've
Okay.
got kidney 27, which Shufu, which houses all the spirit points as well. So I use
Great.
them a lot.
Thank you. Thanks. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we've got another
Yeah.
question from Christine. So, Christine, if you can just say where you are and your question for Mary Elizabeth Wakefield.
Hi, I'm in Sydney. Can you hear me?
Where are you? I'm sorry.
In Sydney.
It's Sydney. Okay, I heard that. Yeah.
I'll just get closer. I was just wondering, it's a bit scary for us to needle in the face, but we get used to it with time, same with eating needling. But when you think about the general population, I imagine that facial and acupuncture in the same, in 2 consecutive words are really scary. It's a hard sell, I think. Facial acupuncture a bit harder than to sell acupuncture by itself. Sell is probably not the right word. But how did you build up your practice when you first started? Seeing it was facial acupuncture, and it probably wouldn't have been the first thing that people would have liked to go to for their problems.
That's a good question, and I will say when I say constitutional facial acupuncture, that means also treating the whole body and the health. So for me, the head, neck, and face, and trunk, and hands, arms, and leg are all together. So if somebody came in with pain, I knew how to treat the pain. If they were in severe pain, I would just treat the pain. But if they had a problem with their rotator cuff, I would do that. And I worked with TCM and also Japanese acupuncture on the body, so I was able to incorporate everything that I felt in the tongue and the pulse and the diagnostics into a very substantial constitutional treatment. But then I started bringing up the needles a little bit to the face, the yin tongs, and starting to work with what was going on in the facial area. And these people started to be very happy about that. And so the facial acupuncture, to me, constitutional, is not separate from acupuncture. People decide to do a whole package, perhaps, of doing facial acupuncture, but I work with everything in the body. I even do back treatments in a facial acupuncture series. That's part of it. And if somebody comes in so they started liking what I was doing, and then they decided, well, gee, this is wonderful. I'd like to have more of that. So I was very excited about it. And being a performer, we're always a singer. The face, the muscles, the showing our face to the world, standing on stage. I was very fascinated with the emotional responses in the face, and the lines and the wrinkles etched in the skin and what they meant in Chinese medicine, in Chinese physiognomy. It fascinated me, so I started studying and looking at that. I really was never taught any facial acupuncture in school at all. And so I really found my own way. So how I got that out there was from sheer excitement and enthusiasm about what I was doing. And I told people about it, and I told my colleagues and friends, and people started coming, and it became a very good business. But I wasn't shy about my excitement, because when I'm passionate and believe in something, people come. And we've got all this social media. We can let people know what we're doing. I had ways of bringing people in, and then I said, gee, I would like to teach this because not many people were doing this at that time. So please know it is a very full constitutional treatment that would stand on its own. So that's how I do it. I'm very, I see your picture. Hi. And so this is how I started. And it does have highs and lows with anything in the practice, but we can't be shy about telling people what we're doing and having your business card ready and giving maybe patients who are already working with you, give them a little taste of what you're doing. They get excited. They tell others. Does that help a little bit? I mean,
it does. I guess when you're telling people, I think a lot of us, I definitely, there's a fine line between saying what you're passionate about and what you're doing, and then taking that next step and saying, you should come in and see me. Is that what you say when you're talking to people, or you just tell them what they're doing and you're doing? And sometimes I feel when that happens, they go, great, I'm going to go see an acupuncturist close by. Would you tell them, here's my card, come see me?
Yeah, sorry, remember word of mouth is the best. You can advertise everywhere, but having patients go out who are really, really keen on you and telling other people, that is the best, really. I have a guy in Montana, though, that the way he advertised was because it was a small town. He had 8 children, and so he created T-shirts for all of them that said, come to see facial acupuncture's blah, blah, blah clinic. And they ran around the town. And, I mean, this is an example of being creative. He got so busy he couldn't see straight. They didn't know about it. So what I do is I have my card ready wherever I go. And people say, what do you do? And I give them my card, and I say, I have an elevator speech, and I just tell them what I do. I work with facial acupuncture. I work with the chi and blood. And they said, what does that do? You have to have a few, like a very short blurb to tell them what you do. Otherwise, if you don't have an elevator, they walk away. Another thing you can do is, if you already have regular patients, is to start to introduce them to this. They give a complimentary treatment. Another thing I did was I would go to these big department stores that have cosmetic departments, where people buy, and I would talk to the women behind the counter, and I'd tell them what I did and give them my card, and I said, I'll give you a complimentary treatment if you refer people. Just one, to get it started. This was years ago, and they came and they referred. The crazy thing is, once it started, you get so busy you can't see straight. And remember, when you're working with the face, you're working with a lot of endorphin points. And I began to have facial acupuncture junkies, believe it or not. I had to say, you cannot come every day. You have highs and lows. You can give a lecture demo. Maybe you have a clinic, correct?
Yes.
So you can you can have people come in and talk about it a bit and let them know what you do. I use herbs, I use essential oils, we created creams, Chinese medicine, masks, poultices for the face. It was all fun and hard work too. But I realize you're in Australia, correct?
In Sydney.
Sydney. We've worked there a lot. I will tell you that I think the whole dry needling thing there in Australia is not helping people. And a lot of people are putting a lot of needles in the face and none in the body. I've seen it. And you can't do that. I'm not saying that you do this. I'm sure you don't. But it kind of, when that happens, it's rough for people who are acupuncturists. Am I off on this, or with people dry needling?
Yes. I know a lot of people are upset at the dry needling. I just think it's so different to acupuncture that my perception is that the community does know that there's a difference between dry needling that they get from a physio,
Yes.
As an adjunct to what they're doing, just to release, muscles, and if something more complicated or complex is needed, they know, okay, well, maybe just trigger points.
No, I understand. I understand. But a lot of them are doing the face too. Yeah.
I actually didn't realize that they were doing.
Yeah.
They were
I'm in Sydney a lot.
Yeah.
I would just say that does this help at all? First of all, work on yourself. I mean, you don't need to, but play with the points. Play with what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Go study with somebody. If it's not me, someone else, if you haven't already, and find your own way then, and get support. It's when you feel 100% about it, and excited. It's infectious. Does that make sense?
It does. No, thank you. I think you've just given me permission to talk to people, because I often feel that I don't want to push, but it sounds like when that you have not been quiet about it, and just expected people to go out and tell other people, even though you've been quiet about it. You haven't been quiet about it. You've been quite verbal about it and shared a lot, and I think that's really informative.
I'm surprised that it isn't doing. You said it is difficult to get started with facial acupuncture in Australia or in Sydney.
Oh, I haven't tried, to tell the truth.
There you go. Bingo. You're welcome to email me, and I'll give you more tips. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
happy
to do that.
Trigeminal neuralgia and things like that, but I haven't tried facial acupuncture more broadly.
Well, everything. If you are an expert if you're working with the whole body, the head, neck, and face are all connected in the ear. Do you know the most acupuncture points in the entire body are the neck, windows of sky, the face, the ears, the scalp? This is Tian. This is heaven, right? We're reaching for that divine level, and it has the most needles in the whole body, and all the yang meridians, as we all know, go up there. So it's powerful, yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. Thank you, Christine. That's thank you for jumping in and asking that question. Now, Tiffany, we can see your webcam. Do you have a question for Mary Elizabeth Wakefield? Do you want? No, we haven't got your audio though, so we need you to unmute yourself. So if you click on the microphone, I think you might be coming in on your mobile phone. Is that right?
Is it working now?
Gotcha.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. I had to disconnect and reconnect a number of times, but I'm glad it's working. Hi, Mary Elizabeth.
Hi, Tiffany.
I have a very interesting case. It's a gentleman that came to me 2 weeks ago, and 4 years ago he was mugged in Barcelona and found in a pool of blood. They put metal plates in his jaw around his TMJ. A year and a half ago, and then he was back in the States, and they redid the surgery, severed the facial nerve, so he has a little bit of numbing on the right side around the zygoma. He, a year and a half ago, developed a dystonia, and his whole head turns to the right, and it's stuck. So he's seen neurologists. Excuse me?
Isn't dystonia an inability to speak?
The dystonia is kind of a contraction of the muscles. They're just stuck like a cramp. So his neck is just pulled to the side. His head
pulled to the right side.
Right to the right side, along with the right facial nerve, and he has some numbing on the right as well. The right the right eye, it does not close all the way. So they've put Botox in his eyelid. They've put 450 cc's of Botox in his levator and some of his trap, which it's starting to wear off right now. They attribute this to trauma, the dystonia. No one really has answers to it because it's happened, 2 years, after the event. I treat him, and the muscles are just so tight, the SCM, and I treat him, and it's amazing. He's completely straight. He's looking straight. He's moving his head around, and he's just like,
Wonderful.
he's opening his mouth, his jaw, and he's just like, oh my gosh. But it only lasts for about 20 minutes. And then he starts to feel it pull back. I work on the Chong. I do kidney 3, liver 3. I work on kidney 25, spirit point. He's very tender along there. I work up along Sangel 17, up along the ear. He has an incision around there, right where the facial nerve would come out, so stomach 7. But I was just looking at my notes, how I should angle that stomach 7 for the motor point and angle down to SI 18 and then down. I've been needling them individually, along with gallbladder 9. I'm doing that one, the eyelid, and then the SCM. I feel like I'm just kind of afraid. I try to hold the muscle. I try to hold it and go in, feeling for the carotid or jugular, just to make sure things are out of the way. But I'll go in a little bit, leave him, come back, stimulate things, and then it will actually go in the muscle. So I try not to force anything, and he'll allow me in. And then I'll do a back treatment where I'll hit all the points, Wakefield point, all the points along the base of the skull. And then I'll hit some of the SCM levator from behind. I'll just, so that's what I'm doing. But it only lasts for about 20 minutes.
We've worked together before, yes. The SCM is the key, and there are trigger and motor points that can be used on the SCM. If you look it up, there's a wonderful book, I don't know, maybe it's in the library there, by Janet Travell, Travell, and there are 2 of them, and she talks about how to work with trigger points with that and release the SCM. And also there are motor points that you can use. I'm actually teaching a course called the archetypes, and we go into all sorts of treatments all over the body. There are certain ways that you can work with the motor points. I believe you have some very good books in the UK about motor points, correct? There are people that are probably not. Matt Callison, Callison, has a book, Matt, M-A-T-T. You can Google him online. He works a great deal with motor points as well, so you might want to look him up. The scalene muscles right behind the SCM are very responsible for turning the head right and left, and they're very difficult to get at. But it's about there is a trigger points in the I would say the medial scalenes. There's a anterior and posterior. Behind, if you're grabbing the SCM, it's that area right behind the neck, around triple heater 16 area. That's the medial. And if you can go in directly, but not too deeply, and just give that a little tap, you might be able to release the trigger point there. Then feel up and down and find out cross fiber where it's tight. You can also use triple heater 16 above or below, right about that area in a motor point, and you needle it perpendicular, and then you angle it. It's behind the SM. You angle that needle horizontally toward the larynx. That works beautifully. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
What we can do after the session in the coming days, Mary Elizabeth, if perhaps you could write a little summary of the resources that you've just shared, Mary Elizabeth, your top 5 or top 10 recommendations on resources that people might find helpful.
Absolutely.
We've got other questions coming in. Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing that. Such an interesting case, and it obviously highlights the far-reaching influence of this type of, often when you think about facial acupuncture, we're thinking, as Mary Elizabeth was saying earlier, the cosmetic or aesthetic, and to all of a sudden just realise this poor person who is left with nothing other than Botox injections. I've got a question, Mary Elizabeth, before we move on to Barre is going to ask a question in a moment. Is just around when in a situation like that where somebody is having medical Botox, are there contraindications? The fact that the Botox is going to be looking to release them.
Yes.
What's your view on sharing a treatment process with something that's so diametrically opposite to acupuncture?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I would say if you're working with Botox, I would not needle it for at least 6 months until the Botox is worn off. And particularly if you're working with the face. Let's say they Botox the suspended sword here, right? That's the corrugator muscle that brings down the eyebrows immediately and causes a frown. The emotion is usually frustration or anger, or internalized anger with one line. If you've got two of them, it's usually more damp heat in the gallbladder and more externalized anger. If you go into this area of the corrugator muscles, which is around bladder Jianzhu, bladder 2 to Yu Yao and above, if you start needling there, a motor point or anything, you're going to unbotox them, and they're going to be very unhappy with you. Plus, the Botox, as we learned with the depression suppression with you, Kath, it goes into the bloodstream. It does not stay site specific. They've proven it goes anywhere in the body, so that's pretty scary. So we don't know where that's going. So anytime a person has been Botoxed, even on the body, and you want to needle it, stay away from it until it wears off, because they will be upset. And also I just have a feeling that if it hasn't worn off and you're needling, you might spread more of the Botox. You will unbotox them, and it might spread it more around the body. It is a neurotoxin. It's the most lethal known to man and beast. It is a neurotoxin. It's terrible. They use it, and it's so lethal they use it in warfare. They have in the past. And I'd have people. I had a woman with Bell's palsy, and they Botoxed the right side of her face for years. Then as she got older, she got acne rosacea. They Botoxed her face for acne rosacea, and when I saw her, her muscles were all flaccid on that side of the face because it freezes it, and people do not use their muscles, therefore they lose it. So the other side of the face, she looked like Jekyll and Hyde. She had two different sides of her face. And then she said to me, this is in a class, can we work on that side that has the Botox? I said, don't touch it. We worked on the other side of the face. I've never done that before, but this side of the face, then the right affected side started to move a little bit, but we didn't touch it. And also, I wouldn't go near it. If you've got somebody that's a whole face or body's Botox, you say, well, I'll work constitutionally with you. Usually people don't do their necks because people have died from not being able to breathe and choked. So you'll find a place that you can work, and once they see how that works, that's good. But be careful with Botox and fillers. Don't needle where there's a filler. You unfiller them. And the problem with all of this is everybody wants a quick fix, and we're offering this whole constitutional treatment with the face or without the face, but we're offering acupuncture that works with body, mind, spirit, and works with the health and well-being of the whole body. And it takes a while to call that online. You all know that it is an organic process, and over time, if people can allow themselves, and usually it's the people I find who nobody can help. We can help. Nobody can help them. They've had it. They've gone to Western medicine. They've gone everywhere, and then they show up at your doorstep. And you have all these skills, working with the body, working with your senseis or your teachers or your sifus, and creating your own, and working with the face. And you see that you can help them not only on a physical but a spiritual level. They'll feel better about themselves, the self-esteem. They won't be in pain. Working with somebody who feels old. Let's say they turn 50, the husband leaves her, and she comes to you and has a self-esteem problem. You can help her with that. So nothing is, what can I say, separate. So I hope this works with the Botox. Be careful. There's a guy in LA who unbotoxes young wannabe stars because they think they need to freeze their face to go into to work in the film industry. And they tell them when they're young, we can't, you have no facial expressions. How would we hire you? So what he does is he capitalizes in unbotoxing all of these young stars and starlets and makes a fortune. So there you have it.
And now we have
just the reverse. Crazy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you again for that that very detailed response. And we've got another question, and this will be our final question for the live call. But of course, what we'd love to do is connect you via email, and we have our chat within the Acupuncture Professional site. And so I've got to pronounce this correctly. Barre has a question. If you just say where you're calling from, Tiffany, I'm just going to turn your video off so that you can then. Thank you again, Tiffany, for making that commentary.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me talk so long. Yeah. I get.
Indeed, and my job, unfortunately, my job is to be mindful of the time. So, Barre,
yes,
are you there? We can't hear you. If you just turn your. There we go. Are you coming in now? Are you there? So your audio's not working. So do you want to type the question in for me? Has anybody else got any questions just while we're waiting for that question to come through? We'll be finishing up in 10 minutes or so. And so Barre's question is about self-care. And this is I guess she's said the diet, nutrition, self-massage, and that's obviously in the face and other aspects.
So the question is
what
kind of self-care?
That's right, I believe so. Yeah, what do you recommend?
Yes.
What do you recommend for self-care? So here,
what do I recommend?
Yeah, what do you recommend for self-care, diet, nutrition,
lifestyle changes are important, and there's an old document called the Chow Yen Fao in which they talked about 5 things that they needed to integrate into acupuncture treatments, and of course Tui Na massage, diet, Qigong exercise, foods, and of course, what is the other one? I said Tui Na, there are 5 of them. Diet, herbs, exercise, and acupuncture. And so I integrate all of them when I work with people. I do hands-on, I do Tui Na, I teach them how to help themselves, I give them facial exercises. I do give them homework. I work with herbs, Chinese herbs. I do work with nutrition, and if I don't know something, I refer out. I have really some fabulous people I refer out to. They refer back to me. I've had, when I go traveling to teach, I give people what I call homework. And I had a woman who had was going through problems with her thyroid in a very blocked throat area, and we had worked on it constantly. I referred her out to a colleague of mine, but I also asked her if she would like to go and join a choir or sing or use her voice in some way. And I say, if that's not comfortable for you, but in a group of people, and she did, and it helped her a great deal with her thyroid. I had another one who was very angry, and aside from the massage, the microcurrent, I use LEDs, she had this big line between her brow, and she was just so angry about, her husband leaving her. And I said, while I'm gone, how about going out and doing some African dance with live drums and just get down with those mamas and let it out. In other words, bring it into the body and release it, because it was many years of anger. Plus she was on herbs for her liver, right? And other herbs, and also nutrition and watching their diet. I found people who have thyroid issues, or Hashimoto's in particular. One of the reasons is that I have an allergy to gluten. So getting them on gluten-free diets, etc. So yes, I think lifestyle changes.
What are the foods that you recommend versus the foods? So gluten's one to avoid. What are your top 5 do's and your top 5 don'ts for consultation?
Oh God, that's difficult. That depends upon the person, but usually, usually I have people, if they have allergies, look at gluten and dairy, right? Usually cow or cow's milk, wheat. Also, people are, I've had people come in and they're on a lot of drugs. I mean, in particular cocaine, in which case I talk to them about it. I try to get them help. I believe in eating regularly for the spleen, and also not overeating. And each person is different. They have allergies to different things at different times. Looking to their gut, looking to whether they have a problem with fungus or candidiasis, and that is why they're having trouble with their digestion. A lot of people do. There's a wonderful acupuncture book out about that, and I could recommend it when I type it in. And she is an acupuncturist who works with people who have problems with candidiasis, but she's able to do it within the realm of Oriental medicine, and she bullet points the symptoms that would just blow your mind. I mean, just blow your mind. And people who can't even walk or have MS, they might have some other problems. So I find a lot of people do not, I say to people, if you're willing to work with lifestyle changes and with diet, etc., with me, you'll have better results. And some people don't want to do that, in which case I say, well, this is a partnership here, whether you're doing facial acupuncture or just constitutional acupuncture or both. I said it will work a lot better if we work together. I'm not fixing you. This is another thing that people want you to do. They want you to be God, and they want you to fix them. And please don't do that. You cannot. You inspire them to feel responsible for themselves and excited to work with you. And then things shift and change in a very big way.
That's a wonderful, and in fact that echoes very much what came up from our last live session with Peter Dedman as well, around that ultimately we cannot change our patients. We can simply present them a mirror in which that they see change in themselves.
Yes.
And I think there's a really lovely. Now, do you have any parting messages? We're coming towards the end now of the live mentoring session. Have you got any last minute things that you wish you knew?
I just swallowed my water and it went down the wrong way. Hang on one second. You talk for a minute.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. Are you feeling okay?
No, I would just like to say to all of you, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you and doing my best to answer your questions. I am very supportive of all of you thriving and being successful. And one thing I will say, your patients are a gift in that they transform us as well. As you work with them and they become better, we also shift and change and transform and become more of who we really are. So it's really, this profession is a gift and a blessing. And sometimes you don't feel like that when somebody comes up against your patterns, your old negative patterns, and they have the same ones, and they make you, speaking of mirror, you're looking at yourself. And that is the biggest gift in the world, because then you can move out of that pattern and look at yourself and come to a place of humility where you can transform and shift. And what a gift. Boy, we really picked a good profession. Yeah, that's what I have to say. I wish you well, all of you. Please be in touch if you wish. g.akra@gmail.com. And Kath, you are wonderful.
Oh, I enjoyed
Thank you for
so
your
much.
service
It's
and
such
everything you're doing.
such a pleasure. It's so incredible again to have everyone, and thank you for those who participated: Chris, Christine, Tiffany, Justin coming from
All of
South
you.
Africa, everyone who came
Yeah.
today, who listened, who participated, and of course, Mary Elizabeth, that would be wonderful to hear from you, your article that you mentioned and those resources. So I will share those in the coming days.
Absolutely. Do you want me to email that to
That
you?
would be fabulous.
And,
That would be fabulous.
okay,
So thank
great.
you, everyone. If you've got any burning questions, I'll
Thank
email
you.
you with Mary Elizabeth's email address so you can ask her directly. So thank you and enjoy
Bravo,
the rest
all
of the
of
week,
you.
and we'll see
Thank
you
you.
on the 1st of April with Isabel Cosgrove. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.